let's talk about Derik Queen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Derik Queen, big man from Maryland. Do we have his measurements pulled up? He did not have a good combine.
He did not have a good combine. He listed at 6'9.25" without shoes.
Yeah.
So about 6'10", 6'10.5" width. And then he had a 7 foot and half an inch wingspan.
Okay.
And then I think he came in at like 241 pounds.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less than that.
6'9.25" barefoot, 7 foot wingspan, just barely over. So he's a plus wingspan. 9'1" standing reach, not huge. And you said about 250.
Yeah.
This is the type of player I should like. And watching him, I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
At all. And I hate to like preempt it that way. I'm just like, this is not a player I liked, but you and I both kind of came in and be like, we'd be really surprised if this was the Jazz's pick at 5.
Yes.
But let's get into him a little bit because there's some stuff there. Like,
absolutely.
The reason I think he's not being talked about at 5 is because he's just way more of a 50-50 bet than some of these other players we've talked about. When it is Ace Bailey's a 50-50 bet, but the 50 upside is like, holy crap, you've got a 5-time All-Star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Derik Queen actually does still have some All-Star upside. He's just got some real downside as well.
I'm going to be honest. I think that, like you said, like Ace Bailey's upside is like All-NBA third team, maybe even better. Like he could be a absolutely ridiculous scorer. With Derik Queen, I think his upside is like 6th man of the year.
Okay.
Like, because my getting into this super early, my comparison from him is like a Nas Reed. He just does not have that shooting yet, though.
No, at all.
Yeah.
And Nas did as well. Now Nas was in terrible shape at LSU as well and got in a much better shape, so that gives you some hope for a guy like Derik Queen. But yeah, let's get into just kind of like who he is as a player.
Yes.
So he's one of 2 true kind of big men that should be drafted in the top 10. Common Malawash, who's the other center at Duke, is going to get drafted. You're going to hear me say the word big man a lot with Derik Queen because I don't know what role he plays.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the big thing right away. Is he a center? Is he a power forward? You mentioned he doesn't shoot threes. When you think about these like really toolsy, offensive skilled big men that are really in vogue in the NBA right now, shooting threes is a big part of it, and it's not at all for Derik Queen's game.
Yeah.
Like I think he hit threes in 4 different games total. I think he hit 7 threes all season.
And it was super weird because like I think it was like coming up to the tournament, he hit like 5 of 11 to end the year.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was like didn't show it at all.
It didn't show him at all. But then the games he hit him, he would hit 2 in a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't make them. He didn't shoot them a whole lot. So it might be there. It also looks really weird coming out of his hand. He's got a really like kind of a single like and like a push. It's weird. It's a weird shot. But like so he played in high school or in the AAU with Cooper Flagg.
Yes.
And on that super team and looked great. He's dominated dudes every step of the way. Like he is ultra productive. What was he? Just about 17 points and 9 rebounds a game, just a hair under 17 points.
Yep, 53% from the floor.
Which is okay. You know, the league is obsessed with these like big guys you can run your offense through. And you look at, Jokic, he's not Jokic. No. But you look at, Alper and Şengün, you look at some of these big guys who can grab the ball, Julius Randle, and kind of make plays out of the post, et cetera, et cetera. That's the concept behind Derik Queen. Yeah. Like that's kind of what you're drafting. That's what you're hoping for. A hub of a playmaker who can catch the ball in the post and do some stuff, get his own shot, or a guy who can catch the ball in the perimeter and kind of create a look for himself. And famously, I think the only buzzer beater in the NCAA tournament this year was by Derik Queen to beat Colorado State. Takes his guy off the dribble in an out-of-bounds play and hits the bank shot to win. It's like there's some real offensive skill there. There's some real intrigue there. I think he's a really good passer. That's where his touch comes in. Like you can really see it. He sees guys all around the court and makes fun passes and quick reads and catches the ball and immediately moves it to somebody cutting to the basket. He's strong. He looks really young still, even though he's actually pretty old for a freshman. He's like 20. Yeah. But he's a kid. Yeah. He's going to get stronger. He's going to get bigger. And conceptually is the type of player that like when he's not playing around better players, which he went to Maryland, he didn't go to Duke. He didn't go to some of these like really high IQ schools. Houston would be a really interesting fit for him. High IQ school. How would he have looked there? I don't want to say Maryland was dumb guys by any means, but how would he have looked with better players around him? Maybe he would look really good. Obviously, he looked really good in the AAU in high school, playing with guys like Cooper Flagg. But while all those things are true that we just talked about, like the offensive upside, there's just a lot of bad there.
Yeah.
First and foremost, because of his size, his conditioning, which is bad, like he doesn't have a defensive position at all. He doesn't really guard. He doesn't want to guard. He's not a shot blocker of any kind. He's pretty ground bound, so he's not blocking shots. So he doesn't really have value there, and he doesn't move quick enough, even though he's pretty athletic, to be like a switchy center either.
Yeah.
So there's there's a shade of Draymond Green when you think about like his offensive upside. There's no Draymond Green comp here at all.
No. And that's something like he isn't super tall. He does have some weight on him.
He's
right?
wide,
and he's super crafty on offense, but his lack of strength shows in some ways on defense, because sometimes he'll push guys off their spot, but equal times he'll let guys get to their spot. And like you said, he has no explosive athleticism at all. The way that he does all these Euros and sidesteps, he's super crafty on offense, but he is not crafty as a defender, like in any way.
No, doesn't read plays, doesn't make a lot of, like, he's not a defensive playmaker really by any means at all. He's not anticipating where guys are going to be. And then his effort level's terrible.
Yeah, and that's something that's super interesting, because on offense, you talked about him, like 1.9 assists doesn't tell the story at all, because I feel like he reads the defense really well, especially for a big man.
He's one of the better big man passers in this draft, if not the best, but like he's certainly one of them.
In the short roll, he's a great passer. And another thing that was kind of interesting is that I want to point out, 76.6% from the line, and then like we also said, he closed the year 5 for 11 from 3. And it's like, based on just how his body is right now. Like, of course, you talked about Nasrid, who came in and made a lot of changes. I think he would need to be a 4 in the NBA.
I think so too.
But if he is a terrible inside defender and he can't shoot threes, you can't be a 4 in the NBA.
Right. It's what the real issue was with Kyle Filipowski last year. And I actually think there's a lot of Kyle Filipowski here, where the Jazz kind of asked Flip to play the 4 and the 5, and I think the 5 was specifically like, you can be a worse three-point shooter and be a 5 in the NBA.
Yes.
You know, you can't be a bad three-point shooter and be a 4 really in the NBA anymore. And because Flip developed into like a 35% three-point shooter or whatever, all of a sudden he could play the 4. Yeah. If he was 30%, he would have to be a 5 and just be able to be a threat to be out on the perimeter. But then Flip is such a bad defensive player, like at least has a defending 5s. He can't guard at the rim at all. He's better the further he gets away from the rim, which is interesting for his size. Flip has a lot of value because now he's defending away from the rim, which is what 4s do, but he also shoots 3s at a high enough level that he can play the 4. Now you've hit a home run. Like, you got a real steal, it looks like, in Flip at the 32nd overall pick.
Yes.
Derik Queen has all those same questions, but you're talking about using a top 10 pick on him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if the three-point shooting's not there, he's not a 4, so he has to be a 5, but I don't think he's going to defend 5s at all. And he's worse defending away from the rim than even Flip was. So all of those questions are there for me. But like the smart reads, the high IQ offensively, like there's a lot of Flip stuff in that sense of it. His ability to create off the dribble, even like their love of the spin move in college, which is both something that Flip and Derik Queen do a lot, are there. I'm surprised we don't see that comp a little bit more.
Yeah.
And where Flip has value. But again, the real value was the Jazz got him at 32. And, you know, if you had drafted him where you drafted Cody Williams, you'd still probably be okay with it. But in a better draft this year, if you're projected to take him at 10, it feels like a little bit of a reach from me. And then a huge reach at 5.
Yeah.
That would be way too high in my opinion.
I will say, though, like, we are talking about him right now for a reason. Like, I don't think the Jazz are going to take him at 5. I do think he'll be a later lottery kind of guy. But something that I thought was super impressive is, and I think Alperen Sengun is a really good
It's like the comp you'll see a lot of people say his upside
is even though he shot 20% from 3 for the year, he was in a lot of pick and pops, and his ability to like actually give a big man a dribble move and get to the rim is super impressive.
It is, yeah.
And then he like going in, I thought of him as a post scorer, but it's like he can drive really well.
Really well.
And which is why I think something super interesting is if he can improve his 3-point shot, because also he shot 46.4% on 17 feet plus 2s. So long mid-ranges, he shot almost 47%, which is pretty solid. If he can develop that, then his ability to drive and be crafty in the paint is only going to open up more if he's actually a threat from outside.
Right.
However, I do think we should touch on the defense a little bit more. On the perimeter, he's super upright, and he either gets beat or fouls a lot of the time. And then inside, we've talked about he's not explosive at all. This stat is crazy to me. Opponents shot 59.9% at the rim against him.
Okay.
59.3% when he was off the floor against Maryland.
Yeah.
So teams actually shot 0.6% better when he was on the floor. Kaman Malawash, 9% worse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
the difference there is crazy.
It's enormous. Yeah. You better have a super versatile defensive big if you're going to have Derik Queen play on your team.
Yes, absolutely.
it's kind of the issue that the Rockets are running into. Like, even if you get the highest end outcome out of him, which is the Alperen Şengün, which there's flaws there. Like, Alperen's a lot stronger, I think, and actually craftier and probably a little bit quicker. Like, they had to play Steven Adams, which is fine. It was like kind of a fun lineup, but even though it had these crazy plus minus numbers last year, they didn't rely on it that much because I think it's hard to keep Steven Adams on the floor in certain situations.
Yeah.
Like, you just got to have like an Amen Thompson type of player to play next to him. And even then, I don't know if it's going to work. They still lost in the first round of the playoffs to a pretty flawed team. So if you're going to draft him, you kind of have to build an entire defense around him. Yeah. Which is like, I hate that.
And that's the thing. You want to be doing that with guards, not a power forward.
Yeah, I will hide a guard. It's really hard to hide a big man in the NBA defensively. And Derik Queen, the problem is Derik Queen, to get value out of him, you have to have him on the floor so much to run your offense through him. Yeah. So it means he has to be on the floor. And that means you also have to have other guys around him that hide him defensively. That's where it just gets really hard. Yeah. Like, you talked about the pick and roll. He can run inverted pick and roll stuff. Like, he can be the ball handler. I think that's interesting. He can probably do big stuff. He can probably, there's really some intrigue there. The effort level was terrible. Questions about his conditioning and then showing up to the combine out of shape was a huge red flag for me. Like, I hate that. It's like, this is your job interview. These are types of guys I generally like, and I just didn't really see it. I get it, but I didn't see the value there.
Yeah. I think that with all these guys, even Jeremiah Fears, like with Jeremiah Fears, I see there is a world in my head for him where he could be a 20-point per game, like 2-time All-Star. Yeah. With Derik Queen, I don't see the defense ever coming around. And to me, I feel like his ceiling might be like a utility big off the bench.
And the hard part is, like, the difference between Alperen Şengün and Kenneth Lofton Jr., like, from a skill set standpoint, probably isn't that huge. They're way different players, obviously. And, like, Alperen Şengün is an all-star, and Kenneth Lofton Jr. is playing in China. Yeah. Like, both of those are on the table for Derik Queen. And, like, it's not like, well, he's way more likely to be Alperen Şengün. I don't think that's true. Like, I think there is a real chance he is Kenneth Lofton Jr. Yeah. Who just, like, dominates lesser players, plays a lot of ISO, and it's cool, but, like, are you ever going to actually let him be that guy on your team over and over and over every possession? And then how hard is that to replicate? So that would be my fear with him. There's some Al Jefferson there, which is just like the effort's not very there. And even then, and the reason I say Al Jefferson is like the raw production. Like, Al, you go back and you're like, this guy averaged 20 and 10. Yeah. And I think there's a world actually where Derik Queen's like, his numbers are always there. It's like 18 and 9. This guy's good. Why do people not want him? And then he's on your team and you're like, I get why nobody wants him. Yeah. I totally get it. The numbers are there. The raw stats are there. It doesn't help you win at all. And I think there's a chance that happens. Even though he'll like hit big shots against Colorado State, and you're like, that's a winner. It's like, what did he do on the previous 10 possessions? You know, were half of them good and half of them bad? So that part of it's interesting. I also wanted to talk about this a little bit with the draft and why good teams who draft don't fall into this trap. We so often try and draft we just being NBA, people in general, draft guys who are in vogue in the NBA at the moment without being able to predict like what the league's actually going to look like 3 or 4 years from now. Yeah. So, like, the Jazz draft Trey Lyles because it was in vogue to have these like kind of multi-skilled bigger guys. By the time Trey Lyles was good enough to actually help you win on the floor, that was no longer precious because every kid in high school was also learning that skill. So they were coming into the NBA as good as Trey Lyles was 3 years down the road. So, like, by the time Derik Queen's actually good enough to help you win in the NBA, which is going to be like his 3rd or 4th year in the NBA when he's 23 or 24, I wonder if every big guy coming in to the NBA has all those skills too. Yeah. And then what he's doing is no longer precious, is no longer all that valuable. And I think we do that a lot. And too often we're like, the in vogue thing right now is Şengün, is Jokic, is these big guys you can run your offense through. So if he has hints of that, draft him. Yeah. And then it's actually not that rare anymore 3 or 4 years now because everybody does it. And I think the value is just not there for me, especially when there are some interesting multi-talented value bigs later in the draft in like the 20s. And some guys even in the 2nd round, Hansen Yang coming over from China. Like, there's just big guys who I think you can run your offense through that you might be able to get at 21 that are better value bets if you're a team like the Jazz specifically. Yeah. And I will say, I'm pulling up Alperen Şengün's stats right now because I want to see what he shoots from 3. Okay, yeah, he is not very good.
No, not
way less than you would think.
Yes,
like 20%, right?
Yeah, 23%, and he shoots 1.2 a game. Yeah, so it's just like not really a factor for him. Yeah. I think that regarding Derik Queen, I think that his floor, which is crazy because we talked about his floor maybe being Kenny Lofton, but I think his floor is higher than Jeremiah Fierce.
Okay.
And I also think
nice to be 6'9".
Yeah, true. Yeah. And also I think that even though I don't think the Jazz will select him, even at like if he gets to the late lottery, maybe the Jazz like trade up to 17 to get him or something like that. But I don't think it's a thought for them at 5. But with that said, I still think I like him with the Jazz more than I would like Jeremiah Fierce.
Totally agree.
With that said, I still think that those are my bottom 2 of the 8 or so people we've done to this point.
If he's not going in the top 5, I actually think there's some interest there at Washington at 6. That's the first place where he would make sense.
Yes.
And after drafting Alex Sarr, who's like that multi-positional defensive player who actually can step out and hit threes also, like that's the other aspect because Derik doesn't shoot. You're going to need a guy who can step out and shoot threes, and like conceptually at least Alex Sarr can do that.
Yeah.
I think he does fit there if you really think you can get like high upside. And actually he's a Maryland guy, like he's from the area. So that might be where he goes.
That makes sense.
I think it's a little high. Boston makes some sense if you're going to, or not Boston, Brooklyn, makes some sense if you're going to be like, we're just going to give him so much runway and we're not close and we're going to let him like have years to figure out who he is and we're going to be willing to build a team around him. That could make sense. I don't love him in Toronto. I don't love him in Houston because they already have the better version of him in Şengün.
Yeah.
He might make sense in Portland as well.
True.
Because they have other big guys that are there. Like you could play him next to some of their existing players on their roster, and I think would make some sense. But even then, I just like don't love it. Maybe Atlanta would be fun just because you're just going to go like super high offense, but they're going to be so bad defensively if he's on the court.
Yeah.
And that's the problem there. Unless you think he fits. I mean, he would be really interesting to play pick and roll with Trey.
True.
You know what I mean? But I don't like him in San Antonio necessarily, even though Wemby is like the type of guy who could unlock him. And maybe at 14, he's just a good value bet at that point. But he's tricky. He's just he's a tricky player and not a guy I would necessarily bet on at 5. If he were to fall to 17, I think that's a real drop for him. That's where Minnesota comes in. Like if they feel like they can't pay Naz Reid, he just steps into the Naz Reid role and you hope he plays that. And even then, like you said, Naz has learned how to shoot.
Yeah.
So, I get it. I get the player. He's probably, if I'm a Jazz front office person, he's totally a guy I'm okay missing on.
Yeah.
He's just like, whatever. Fine. Yeah. I think there's better bets at 5.
And like you said, I think you have at least a shades of version of that with Kyle Filipowski already.
Yeah, who might be a better player.
Yeah.
He just might end up being a better player overall. So I don't think that would be totally out of the question entirely. Yeah, decent landing spots. Washington probably makes some sense. Portland could make some sense. And then San Antonio or Minnesota once you get really late lottery out of the lottery.
Yeah.
I just worry if he goes higher than that, you're putting too much on his shoulders.
Yeah.